Figuring out how to actually talk about what I want and getting to know people that I can actually do that kind of honest communication with and just be like, what do you want? What do I want? Like, let's do this. Let's make these things happen because it's possible. And what we want is not the script, and that is not bad.
Hey, you. Thanks for tuning in. Just a quick heads up. This episode is rated X, which means there is a lot of explicit talk about sexuality, sex acts, and other adult topics. This is definitely not safe for work. You might even end up hearing some sex happening. Use your best judgment on this one. One of the things that I love about orgies is how easy it is to see how many different flavors of people there are, and flavors of relationship styles, and flavors of getting your needs met, and flavors of having a thrilling, fulfilling, exciting life. I had the opportunity to attend this really interesting, I'm calling it an orgy, but really it was a group of friends, a lot of whom are poly, and somebody was having a birthday or something, I think, and that person wanted to bring their partners, and those people wanted to bring their partners, and when you have a really lovely, generous, open friend group of poly people, the people that are connected to other people can make quite a large group. I love that most of the poly people I know are so creative and thoughtful. And when something like Valentine's Day happens and everybody has a couple of partners that they want to spend time with on Valentine's Day, and all of those partners have other partners, and well, how do you get everybody together? How do you decide who you're going to spend time with? All of them is the answer that some of my friends have decided. And I happen to be seeing somebody in that group, and so I got invited to this big, beautiful, lovely poly people weekend, which was, basically an orgy really when it comes down to it, just because there were so many people that were playing with other people, and there was a lot of openness, and there was a big house that we were able to share and to adjust to suit our needs, so that we were able to have like a dance party one evening. And I call this episode Lessons from an Orgy because there was so much openness and sexuality going on. It was a beautifully planned event. Apparently it's been happening for years, and it just gets more efficient, and the logistics get easier for everybody every time. And there were some really brilliant things. Like, not everybody knew everybody to begin with. And so the organizers decided, wouldn't it be lovely if we had some time to introduce ourselves to each other and kind of get to know each other before we're in this interesting orgy situation with a bunch of people, some of whom will be strangers and some of whom will not. So what's a creative way to fix that? How about we have a small series of get-togethers on the weekend before? This was such a creative group. I remember at one of the earlier brunches, we were asked if we wanted to do any kind of art projects during this weekend. And I realized I could do some audio recording. And I asked if people would be interested in sharing, and I got a handful of people that were very generous in offering their time and sharing their answers with me. So here is this episode, Lessons from an Orgy. I end up speaking with, I think, 4 different groups of people, 5 people overall. There's a woman named Rose that shared about what she thinks of her wedding ring and how she deals with it, and how she tracks STI safety. There's a man who goes by the alias of Mr. Sailor Moon, who has some very explicit and interesting fantasies that he shares. And he talks about the emotional and the physical risks that he was considering when he decided to fulfill that fantasy. There's a man named Roger who shares about how often he feels like he's communicated everything he needs to his poly partners, and how often he finds out that he was wrong and what he does about it. And then there's a couple who has been together for a very long time, Rita and Antonio, and they've been living the poly lifestyle for a good chunk of that, and they share some of their journey together and how they've navigated having new relationships come in, NRE, new relationship energy, and how they have learned to stay dedicated and committed to each other. When we recorded these episodes, we were actually in one of the closets of one of the rooms in the big house and snuggled up in between on the floor of the closet with a wood paneling behind us and not a very solid door in front of us. It's not a very soundproof studio. And I think you'll hear towards the end as the party starts to ramp up and we end up finishing the interviews so we can go and do something else fun and creative. I hope you enjoy this episode. So, Rose, how do you describe your relationship status to other people?
I generally say that I am poly or in an open relationship, although that has sort of changed because I used to consider myself to have a primary, and that has sort of shifted in the last year to being more of a, like I am my own primary and I have other partners. Yeah, I guess that's how I would describe my relationship status.
How do you assess risk so that you feel comfortable engaging and playing with multiple partners safely?
So the way I have it set up now is I keep a sexual health history card, which has my testing history, all of my partners' testing histories, and any notes that I feel are relevant to providing to a new sexual partner. And it's kind of fun because I can be like, hey, do you want to be on my card? You know, like you can sort of, it's sort of like a calling card.
Oh, wow. A very sexy calling card.
Want to trade cards? And I get tested at least once a year, either if a partner's sexual risk history has changed or if my status is about to change. And I just rely on my partner's words. I've never asked to actually see tests. That's how I choose to work.
You can't trust someone that you're having sex with.
That's a big
bummer. Should you really be having sex with them?
Right. Right. And I haven't run into that yet. I realize that's a risk, and I'm taking it. I use barriers with my penis-having partners who are not the person I'm married to. I don't use barriers for oral sex. It's another risk that I choose to take.
I take the same risk.
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty common.
Yeah. For me, it's worth it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing this with us. Here's the next question, and I saw you smile a second ago when I asked you this before. What is your best memory of a sexual experience that happened without a cock inside of a pussy, and how did you end up there?
So I have a lot of them. I have many of those memories. The one that jumped to my mind was one time I was at the house of two of my partners who are also partnered. They have a kid together, and I was there with my family as well. with my husband and my kids, and we were all just, spending time at their house. And after the kids were in bed, we were hanging out in the kitchen, the 4 parents. And I don't remember who instigated it, but at one point someone said, let's just focus on Rose. Let's just have I know what it was. We were talking about threesomes, and I was like, threesomes are kind of hard because, one person often gets left out. And they were like, but what if maybe you just get all the focus on you? And I was like, okay, I'll try that. Sure. And so I was laying on the bed, and one of my partners was going down on me, and one of my partners had his cock in my mouth from behind, like I was looking up and he was behind me, and it was amazing. It felt like all of the attention toward pleasure was on me. Like I got to direct what was going on. And that felt great.
So lovely. And I can see you almost blushing.
Yeah.
At the memory.
Yeah. Though I blush very readily. Like if someone needs blushing for, I will do it for them.
That's wonderful. I like to make people blush, and I like to make them think. So,
well, you've done both. I appreciate it.
Good. So you told me earlier that you don't wear a wedding ring, and that there's a specific reason why. Would you please share?
Sure. So I got married pretty young, and I did have a wedding ring, and on our 10-year anniversary, we chose to melt our rings together. For me personally, it was largely about taking back ownership of saying yes or no to people, not relying on being owned by a man to keep me safe, being able to use my no because I don't want someone's attention, or being able to say yes and being as honest as possible about either of those, the yes or the no.
That's really lovely. I find that that's been a theme in my own life too, is figuring out when and how to say no, and then figuring out when I want to say yes.
Yeah.
And how.
Yeah. It can be tricky.
Was there something particularly helpful that was a pivotal point for you in that journey?
I think it was just a slow process of sort of unfolding and realizing after many, many years of having people make assumptions about me based on either that I was wearing a ring or whatever cues they get, either that I was available and wanted attention, or that I was already taken and belonged to someone, and that's just never how it has been between me and my partner.
So the recognizing how misunderstood you were being in the world was a catalyst?
Yeah, I guess so. And wanting to be able to do that work through communication rather than having my ring be a signal, because I feel like the wedding ring often means something very different to people who are not familiar with open relationships or polyamorous relationships.
Yeah, I think you're right. Especially in our society, most people have a certain assumption about what that means.
Right. And for a long time, I actually used that to blend in. Yeah. And I kind of have just decided not to blend in.
To be yourself. Yeah. Nice. I don't think you could really blend in anywhere. I don't think any of us really could.
No.
And that's not the point, right?
No.
Awesome.
No.
Well, thank you for sharing, Rex.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This is Rebecca.
This is Mr. Sailor Moon.
Nice. Hello, Mr. Sailor Moon.
Hello, Rebecca. How are you?
I am really good. I'm having a great weekend.
Yeah, me too.
So thank you so much for being a part of my data collection project. I have a couple of questions that I want to ask you.
Okay.
So the first one is, how do you describe your relationship style to other people?
That's evolving, but I think non-hierarchical polyamory or non-hierarchical non-monogamy is generally how I describe it. Yeah.
Cool. That sounds easy, right?
Definitely not easy. It takes work, but like worth it, fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, very much so.
Do you have a favorite memory of what has made it worth it for you?
Having multiple partners and really stretching with all of them to like grow and explore the like full depth of who we are as complicated people, I think for me has just made me more aware of everything that I like want to be and of pushing to like just explore more. It's really, really nice to not feel like you have to be everything for a person, but that everything is in some ways possible.
That sounds pretty incredible. What is your best memory of a sexual experience that happened without a cock inside of a pussy? And how did you get there?
I mean, so many of them.
All right, I'll take 2 or 3. That's fine.
Well, I was actually just thinking about the board outside, which has the like sex act data collection about, and we were having a little debate about like what actually defines a sex act, because so many people define it as like penetrative sex or even more limiting, like just penis and vagina sex. And it's like sex is so much more than that. I think for me, a lot of my favorite sex act, like at this event, not this year, but like 5 or 6 years ago, one of my most like indelible memories as someone who identifies as being into age play. I had been a daddy to a lot of people before and been a big in age play relationships for a long time. And I had never actually allowed myself to like be little and feel little with someone. And so I had an experience with a person who's here of just being held and stroked and like being very small and being very vulnerable and like fearful of everything around, and at the same time feeling incredibly safe. That was just about being held.
Wow.
And so like that was amazing. Then like also there's sex acts that do involve penetration, and that can be like so deeply intimate or just like so deliciously fun. So like the deliciously fun is I just came in from sucking a friend's cock that we had negotiated a couple weeks ago, because I just like love sucking cock. Like it's great to have like, it's super fun. And I was like, I just want you to spray cum all over my mouth, all over my face. Let's do this. And he's like, yes, totally game. Let's do this. And that's like just having friends who are willing to be playful and like being honest about what you want.
That must be very freeing.
Yeah.
Have you always been able to be that free sexually?
No, not at all. So much no. I think I spent most of my teens feeling incredibly awkward, like not even dating, like being afraid to talk about anything that I wanted. And most of my 20s being very performative and feeling like I had to be following a certain script, and anything that I wanted outside of that script was impossible. And then most of the last 10 years figuring out how to actually talk about what I want and getting to know people that I can actually do that kind of honest communication with, and just be like, what do you want? What do I want? Like, let's do this. Let's make these things happen because it's possible. And like, what we want is not the script, and that is not bad.
I like that. What we want is not the script, and that is not bad. I grew up on the ethical slut, which is sex is fun and pleasure is good for you.
Yeah. Sex is really fun. Playing games is a fun thing, and sex, like, it's a game. It's a really big, messy game, but like, it's a game.
How do you assess risk for that kind of game?
I think that there's risk on a few different levels. So there's the like sexual health conversation, which is mostly just being really educated about, like, trying to be as educated as possible about what is out there and what like real risks to sexual health are, and getting tested regularly, having partners who are tested regularly, being aware of like what barriers are effective for what things and what precautions are effective, and then assessing like what level of risk. In like this scene that just happened, my friend wanted to have a condom on because he, like, outside of his primary partner, he doesn't have any non-barrier sex, oral or vaginal or anal. For me, it would have been fine to not have a barrier for oral, but I'm like, okay, we will go with the higher level of precaution here. But if we had been doing like anal sex, I would have been like, barrier, absolutely, like no deal otherwise. And so that's like one level of negotiation. And then there's, I think, within especially getting into like impact play and BDSM, a level of risk assessment and safety around the immediate physical health of a body, of like, let's make sure that things are happening in a way where they're not going to permanently injure someone's body. And sometimes that's hard to assess. Like friends who are really into needles or cutting, that's walking right up to this line of like, is this safe for a human body physically? And then there's an emotional safety. And that is, I think, really the much more complicated one than the other two, because the other two, I don't know, they seem more cut and dry about levels of risk awareness and how to communicate. And I think when we're digging into emotions and expectations, that requires a whole nother level of conversation and really like ongoing connection and willingness to communicate before, during, and after playing and connecting, to make sure that like feelings are not being hurt in ways that cause damage.
That's really interesting that you're thinking about it that way. And I'm kind of new to playing with large groups of people, and having not seen how that can look, I think it's always very interesting to watch other people sort of model the potential for how to address that, especially the emotional risk. Is there a template or some way that you would generally approach that?
I wish I had a good template for that, aside from just talking and checking in and asking people, like really checking in. How are you feeling? How are you doing? How is this for you? Was that okay? Yeah. The like, will it be okay? Is it okay? Was that okay? Like, let's check in before, let's check in during, let's check in after.
Nice. And if it wasn't okay, how would you say that if you're the person receiving?
And the wasn't okay is so hard to say as someone who just got hurt, or so hard to receive as someone who like did hurting. And that is like, okay, what needs to happen to repair this? How do we make this better?
So it sounds like it going slow and checking in very often is maybe a good way to minimize that fallout.
Yeah. And I think the going slow, and it's a funny thing that I run into at some parties. There's a couple parties that I've that I go to that have a larger draw of people from around the country and are like larger than the one we're at right now, where there's less geographic and historic closeness between a lot of people. And one thing that people coming into that kind of get into trouble with sometimes, or like feel bad about, is someone will come in who's new and see like scenes happening, and they're thinking, oh my God, why can't I do this? Do people not like me? Like, something must be wrong with me. And in fact, no. It's like, you're new here and you're watching people who may started to get to know each other like 4 parties ago, and maybe had a negotiation about what they're actually doing like 6 months ago, and have all of this time and all of these conversations, not even directly about playing together sexually, but just building up a level of trust and a level of friendship and a level of intimacy that allow for that ease in this environment. And there's no replacing just like actual time, like spent with a person to make that ease happen. And it's not that you're awkward, and it's not that no one likes you. It's just that you're new. And so you just be here and let people get to know you, and then like it gets easier.
That's great advice. Just be here and let people get to know you.
Yeah. I think I heard that actually as like Dan Savage's podcast talking about like the best way to approach a play party the first time is to expect that you will do nothing, to just be like a complete, just hang out, like go and hang out in the kitchen or like on the edge of the room, and don't feel bad about it, but just like have conversations, see what's going on, like feel the like energy of the situation, because you just have to go slowly.
And no one else can do that for you.
Right. Yeah. And there's like no shortcutting it. Well, there is. You can try. And that winds up with people getting hurt a lot of times. The like trying to like leapfrog over actually having established trust.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Sailor Moon. I really appreciated the intimacy that you shared.
Rebecca, thank you very much. It's been really good talking.
Thanks. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Welcome into the closet.
This is great.
So, I really appreciate your willingness to come in here and share and be intimate and be a model of poly, sort of. So the first question that I've been asking everybody is, how do you describe your relationship style to other people?
How do I describe it? Well, I think I've found that my relationships with people are fairly unique one to the other. There may be ways in which they look similar. Like, for example, I might have sex with more than one person, but the thing we call sex just doesn't feel like the same thing to me. My experience with one person is its own thing. And so, yeah, technically I might be having sex with 2 people, but I'm not having the same thing with those 2 people at all. So that's the thing I most notice about it, that each relationship has its own existence, its own entity. And I really like that element. I like to fall into the subtle and not so subtle differences, because it always has felt like there's more to explore the more I look. There's a fractal quality. I use that word a lot, but that's particularly when I'm experiencing a new sensation. And it could be a new sensation as in I've met a new person and I'm interacting with them for the first time. Or it could be a new sensation like, well, we've done this for 10 or 12 years now, but we're starting it again. And this is new. Just a few minutes ago, we weren't doing this. So the novelty comes back in feeling that same old sensation again in this moment, and waiting a little bit longer to see what that sensation is going to do next is something that I really enjoy. And that's been pretty rewarding. This just seems like there's more all the time. As a result of this, I don't move very fast in relationships. It takes me a long time to get down the standard progression, by which I mean we've only just held hands. Oh, well, now we've kissed. Well, now we've gone significantly further than that, but we haven't gone all the way. That standard script. Well, yeah, I take a long time to make it all the way down that script because there's just so much to explore at each boundary. Well, it doesn't always take that long, but
right.
Yeah.
Every relationship is different, right? So it sounds like you're quite a nonconformist. I'll bet that would be difficult to describe yourself in average society.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of luck with that.
Do people just give you funny stares when you try and explain, or?
I guess so. I mean, and I don't really expect people to get it quite. I didn't get it, even though I was doing it. I didn't have the words for it. I think I've just begun to realize what's going on here and what I like about it. That's kind of a new development.
Well, what do you like about it?
I like the sense of freedom, I guess, that comes from realizing that between any two moments is another moment that can be experienced. Just slowing way down has opened up a lot of possibility for me. And I just like that a lot.
It sounds like a lot of enlightenment now. Be here now.
Yeah, it's kind of got that whole mindfulness aura around it.
Yeah. Are you a meditator?
I never was any good at it. I'm a masturbator. That's a form of meditation that I am quite good at, and spent a lot of time in that space.
It's funny. I was doing a short video for some friends recently, and I said, okay, I'm going to get off now and I'm going to go in. And then I did not say masturbate, even though that's what I was planning on doing. And I was like, wait. No, I'm going to be honest. I'm actually going to go masturbate. And this is why.
I didn't think I was going to say it just now.
Excellent. Well, thank you for saying it. Thank you for being open. Are there any mishaps or poor judgment calls that you're willing to share? And how did that make you a better partner going forward?
Not that I can share specifically. I'm not coming up with anything that isn't sort of delicate. But in general, I think where I fall down is on assuming I've been heard when I'm communicating about, say, a new partner or a new activity or something along those lines. I try to be as transparent as I can, as early as I can. And I often think I've done that. But it turns out later I wasn't as successful as I thought. And I'm sometimes a little alarming how surprised I am when the same thing happens over and over many years. You'd think I'd learn. But I'm sure I'm learning.
You must be, because I've seen you with some of your partners, and it seems like there's a lot of cohesion and a lot of connection there.
Yeah. Things have been going spectacularly well for the past hunk of years. And I guess I did get there honest. There was a lot of work put in to get to here, I guess.
So would it be fair to say that some of those experiences that have happened years ago gave you more insight into what you needed to say and how early and when?
Certainly, yeah. And I guess the other thing is to have a lot of forgiveness for myself. I've learned to do that because if anything, I've learned it's that I'm not going to get this right totally. And that there's no sign I'm going to ever get it perfect. So giving myself less of a hard time about mistakes has been something I've learned. That's helped a lot.
Have your partners figured out how to do that with you, to give you less of a hard time about your mistakes and themselves too? I'm sure it's not just one way.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. It's a team effort. Everybody's got their own issues to work with, but it's not silos where we spend all that time just in our own pit digging away. It's a big shared effort.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I'm probably the most grateful for, is that I've found myself or found people to bring into my life who are really able and willing and want to do that kind of work together.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
You're a lucky man.
I'm right up there.
That's often how I feel. Very, very lucky person.
Mm-hmm.
Well then, this is a very juicy question.
Juicy question.
What is your best memory of a sexual experience that happened without a cock inside of a pussy?
Yeah, this is a tough one because there are way too many to choose from.
I'll take 2 or 3.
2 or 3, yeah.
However many you want to share.
Let me see.
The highlights.
I think I'm going to not let it be a race because there's too many, and I wouldn't be able to really rank them. Well, all right. Here's a problem. Some of my favorite moments have involved experiencing my partner's having pleasure with someone else. Yeah, in a lot of those cases, the rule would disqualify these events, but I wasn't the one whose cock was involved. But I'll discount those.
I like watching you filter through, be like, okay, well, this may not count.
Yeah.
What else would work?
Well, I'm a humongous fan of sensual touch and the traditional sensual massage experience is it's really been transformative for me ever since I discovered there was such a thing as just relaxing as totally as possible and letting somebody else drive your experience by placing their hands on your skin. Experiencing that, a bunch of different specific occasions come into my head, and it's really epic to have somebody else's focus on you. And it doesn't feel like you're just receiving. It feels like you're a part of a dance performance almost, because there's so much give and take in your reactions to touch. And a person who's really listening is getting a lot out of the experience as well. I always wanted to learn to do it as well as it's been done for me, and I've just not got I don't feel like I can reproduce that experience. I can talk about it. People don't know what I'm talking about, but I can visualize it. But man, it's like watching a musical performance of like an orchestra or something. You just like, I wish I could make some of those sounds happen.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you describe it as relaxing completely and letting somebody else's hands drive your experience. And also that it's not a purely receptive thing, that it's a dance. There's a lot of your reactions and your response that inform, I guess.
That might be the core experience that I get out of almost all of this stuff in the sexual and erotic realm, is the conversation. I mean, that conversation can happen in just the touch of one person's hand against another, and saying hello. Yeah. Sometimes there's a subtext to that. There's sometimes a deeper connection. It's kind of laughable almost, but it's there, and that's what I enjoy the most, I think, is finding that little bit of conversation.
Even when sometimes the conversation is physical and not verbal.
Yeah, particularly when it's nonverbal. I mean, I like verbalizing. I enjoy talking about things, narrating. That whole, I don't know if it's a guideline or what, but in kink scenes, for example, the book says you should tell someone what you're going to do with them, tell them what you're doing with them while you're doing it, and then tell them what you just did with them. Just to, bring up the drama one notch.
Yeah. It's funny. That sounds like Toastmasters.
Perfect.
Tell them what you're going to tell them.
Uh-huh.
Tell them what you need to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought? Well, thank you so much, Roger, for joining me here in my tiny closet.
Thank you for pulling me into the closet.
I'll let you out now if you like.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, Antonio and Rita. It's nice to have you here in the closet.
It's nice to be here.
Delighted.
So thank you so much for coming in here and being willing to be an example of a long-term poly couple.
Yeah.
Would you tell me a little bit about how long you've been together?
This weekend is our 21st anniversary of our first date. We have been married for 19 years, and we opened a relationship, in 2006, I think it was. It was like
Sounds
2005
right.
or 2006. So the majority of the time we've been together, we have been poly, and
It just keeps getting better.
Lovely.
I'd happily say I'm more in love than the day I got married.
yeah, it's been a journey, and we argue a lot, and that's probably part of the reason why we're actually happy to be together.
We're getting better at it, though.
We don't
Experience.
maybe less holes in the walls, but that's another topic altogether.
Do you guys ever find it challenging to describe your relationship to other people?
No. I mean,
The poly part or us.
I would say that it's, as far as like the style of poly that we do, there seems to be a style that's based on a lot of pre-processing and post-processing with any interaction with anyone else, and we're not that style. We trust each other and do our thing and maybe discuss it. I mean, I certainly bounce experiences off Rita for just to read on how I'm interpreting something, but it's not so much asking permission as just checking, just letting her know where I'm at with somebody.
That's really neat. I've found that oftentimes my poly partners are the best advisors that I have in my other relationships.
Yeah.
Because they know me and they know my
They know you.
strengths and my weaknesses.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't want to say that we are not like super communicative. We like part of it, I think, is being communicative up front and essentially saying these are the parameters. And and there's still things like there have been times where Antonio has been interested in someone, and I'm like, that person is from hell. I mean, or we do have veto power to a certain degree. I've had relationships that were honestly not great, and Antonio could kind of see it all along, and it took me a while, and by the time I actually was able to kind of extract myself from those relationships, it went really far in actually making us be closer together and making it and kind of priming us for future like alternate relationships. I think the main thing is that I don't think the best word is micromanage. We do not expect to micromanage each other's alternate relationships. Like, this is what we trust each other, and we, if you got questions, if you want to talk about it, that's great. If you want to ask me advice, that's also great. I don't need to see all your texts. It's like, and I know some people who do that, and it seems like it works for them, but I don't think we need it. I think we have enough of an anchor of a foundation in our primary ship that we don't need that. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of the difference that I've seen with some other experiences that I kind of have watched other people have, is that I've definitely known folks over the years that have kind of explored this type of relationship where I felt to myself, you guys are not really ready for this. And not that I'm like, we're ready. It's more so that I feel like you really got it. Like, you have to really trust the person you're entering into it with. And I've seen people enter into it for what I feel like are the wrong reasons. And it's sort of like, on one hand, you do you, but on the other hand, I really believe there are good things that can come of relationships like this. And if everyone could be just a little bit more thoughtful, then, we wouldn't have some of the poly boot camp disasters that we see occasionally. This particular group in general, we don't really see those, which is fabulous, because it reminds me regularly that this is a good thing. This is a positive thing. This is a way to share experiences in ways that normally you'd be kind of isolated. Like, even if you have a life partner, they're your partner. That's it, really. And not to trivialize that, but it's like, I love the idea of being able to share your partnership with other partners, because then you've got, it's like the whole, it takes a village to raise a kid. It's kind of similar. It takes a village to have what I feel is the richest kind of relationship.
Yeah, I know what you mean about people starting this type of relationship for the wrong reason. I used to tell all of my friends, because most of my friends are not poly and haven't been most of my life, that when they're getting to the point where their relationship is going sour and they're like, well, if we just opened it up, that might save it. Like, hey, look, if you can't have one successful relationship, you can't have two or more.
Yeah.
Because it's exponentially more complicated.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
If we felt that our relationship was in danger, we would close it, not the other way around, because ours is our priority. And also, to that end, I would add a slight tangent, but when we took divorce off the table as a threat to throw at each other in fights and arguments, that really significantly, noticeably changed the dynamic of our relationship, because we really realized a commitment for life. And now we're more invested we're thoroughly invested, I would say, in figuring out a way through whatever shitstorm we find ourselves in at the moment. And so that's pretty, that made a big difference. Like, now we fight, that's not part of the conversation. We're going to work through it. And maybe that isn't today. Maybe we got to sleep on it and figure it out tomorrow. But we're not, okay, fine, then move out.
I'm curious. You said it took divorce off the table. How did you do that? Just an agreement, or?
Well, is it because
one day we said
I am I'm an extremist, and I am definitely the kind of person that, especially towards the beginning of a relationship, I essentially under the belief that if we can't make every little ass freaking piece work, then we shouldn't be together. That's just the way it is. And so that was largely because I'm the one who threw that down a lot. Like, maybe we just should not be together at all. And essentially, and then when we were, in less heated moments, and we were able to actually have a conversation, we kind of got to the bottom of, you know what, actually, I would rather probably deal with anything in the entire world than walk away from you. I think all things are worth, with the exception of a few extreme things, but all things are worth us trying to work out. And which includes things like, some occasional, Antonio is, bless him, not known for having horrendous poly experiences. His have all, for the most part, even if they don't last for a long time, have all been relatively positive. I, on the other hand, I've had to learn to be better at, and now it's been actually several years since I've been in another committed relationship, but I'm comfortable with that. It's kind of, where I am now is to be open to the idea, but I'm I'm not in a hurry to find, because I've never been like that anyway. He literally kind of popped out at me at Pike Place Market. I did not know of his existence until he said good morning to me one day, and that's just kind of how I am. And so for me to actually even consider having this sort of relationship with another human is like huge when you consider the fact that I, spend most of my time in my head. So I may not be as active with it, but it is still the mentality that I share, and still the belief that I have that is best. As I said to my mom, so I have 5 brothers and sisters, and how I explained this to my mother, bless her, was that I said, it's kind of like having multiple children. Like, you don't, and I know that some people aren't good at this, but my mom, I felt, was very good at it. You don't split your love into little chunks. You multiply it. You make more. And that way you have enough for everybody. And when in a situation like this, like Antonio gets all of my love when I am with him. But when I am with other people, they get a whole bunch of my love too. They don't get quite as much because he's my primary, but I'm not splitting it up. I'm not. And I feel that really when it comes to these kinds of relationships, you kind of can tell when one isn't quite working, when you feel like you're splitting it up. You're chunking it up, and I'm like, that's not how I want to do this. I mean, and except unless that's something you've agreed to. And I feel like we've both been pretty good at least in finding partners that kind of agreed to the same thing. Again, Antonio's way better at than me. With me, I kind of learned the hard way, like what not to do. And it was like painful at the time, but I learned so much from it that it was. Now that it's been 10 years, it was worth it. now I know what not to do and what to ask for and how to ask for it. And I don't think I would have learned all that without that experience.
Do you mind if I share how I expressed to you at the end of your relationship?
Yes. I mean, no, I don't. Go ahead.
Okay. Rita's last relationship was 4 years long, in love. It was I felt like my queen wasn't being respected by her other partner. Not only was Rita settling for less from her partner as he deprioritized her for more and other partners, but her stress over that was causing her to view me as a shoulder to cry on about her other relationship rather than having a relationship with me. And so finally, instead of when it got to a point where I had to make a call, I didn't tell her what to do. I told her what I was going to do. What I needed was a partner who was going to be in a partnership with me. And I was feeling just like I certainly want to support my partner in, if she's having a tough moment, but when it's for a year or more of the same stress. Yeah. I was like, okay, I need to be in a partnership with somebody who's in a partnership with me. And this isn't. And if you need to continue in this relationship with him, you do what you need to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your relationship, but I am going to need to step away because this isn't a partnership between us anymore when the only conversations we have are about your stress with him. And she pulled her head out of his ass and dumped him. And I got my wife back, and it was awesome.
And I felt, it was Antonio was giving me an ultimatum, and I was angry, but he was so obviously right. And it was the kind of thing where me and this other person, we had tentatively ended the relationship, but it was kind of teetering on, well, maybe we can try again. Well, maybe blah, blah. And I knew in giant, big, bold black letters in my mind, end it now. I knew this. I was just having a very hard time reconciling all of myself with it. And so him coming in saying that, it made me really angry, and he was absolutely right, and that was what I had to do. And it was really hard, but it was really hard, and it stayed really hard for several months. But interestingly, despite the fact that relationship had been longer than the other ones that I'd had before it, I healed from that faster. Because the being able to say, okay, I've had enough of this crap, I need to extricate myself right now, was this magnificent explosion of like healing, self-healing that I didn't realize was possible. And I'm glad, in retrospect, I am really glad that it happened the way it did, because I don't know if I would have had, I think being forced to do that was a really good idea. And it really made me realize, well, first of all, this is the person who is my anchor, and he is my priority. And also that then after him, I should be the priority. and then me, and then the other people that I'm involved with. And life is too short to actually hand myself over to someone who isn't going to value me the same way.
Never settle.
Never settle, which is,
if it's not awesome.
Well, it doesn't have to be awesome all the time. It just has to. It just has to work.
Blessing.
Yes. That's it. It has to be a blessing. And the thing is, everything is a blessing. Like everything that's beautiful is a blessing. Whether it's like the right amount of wasabi, or like this beautiful grilled salmon, or this flower that opened, or the paint color that we chose for the house, which is orange, so our house looks like a pumpkin, and they're all different levels of, you can have all different levels of a blessing. And that
even if it's challenging.
Even if it's challenging. Like
if I'm learning something, that's value.
It is valuable. And I might, be usually more fond of animals than I am of people, but the people that I do like, I really like. And I feel like it would be a waste to not be able to forge those connections with people. Yeah. So.
And I'm like, a couple of my closest friends in this community, period, best friends, are my ex-girlfriends. I wouldn't trade that for the world. That's, even if our initial romantic encounter was 6 months, I've had years since of an even closer relationship. And that's been awesome.
I found the same thing. I feel like, when a relationship transitions, especially in my poly world, and it usually transitions to something even better no matter what it is. One of my exes is now in a monogamous relationship with a woman he met while we were dating. And it was so easy to be like, you want to do that? Go do that.
Go ahead and do that.
Compersion.
And so now about once a year, we have breakfast and we talk, and he usually ends up asking me a bunch of sex advice questions, which is so fun. And it's a blessing.
Yeah, and we get better at sex because, more experience, wider,
more input.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I haven't been as good at choosing partners that I want to stay friends with. Although one of them I am still friends with. And
you were shocked at the idea that I would ever want to.
I just couldn't believe that. I was just like, how could you possibly be friends? Now that it's been years, that aside from this one last super traumatic, I am friends on some level with all of my previous partners. And yes, I like them better now. I didn't realize. It's interesting because there was so much emotion involved at the time that I didn't realize that I didn't even really know this person enough to really love them as much as I think I did. And I know them a lot better now, and I'm comfortable with the relationship that I have with them, which is something that I didn't think I could be able to do at the time. So, yeah.
Well, that's really beautiful. Thank you both so much for coming in and sharing. And I think we've got some really great stuff in here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think we better give Hillary back
her room.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Hey there, pleasure seeker. Well, that's it for today's conversation. Here at Pleasure Central Radio, we love using conscious communication, science geekery, and copious amounts of true pleasure to improve our partnerships, our money, and our love lives. And we hope you do too. If you loved what you heard here, we'd love a review. You can do this easily on podcast players like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it's an easy way to help more people discover the show without you having to actually bring it up with them. To hear other episodes of the podcast and get notified immediately when a new episode is released, follow me on your favorite podcast player. Find out more and get in touch at pleasurecentralradio.com. Your thought to ponder today is...
Threesomes are kind of hard because, one person often gets left out. And they were like, but what if maybe you just get all the focus on you? And I was like, okay, I'll try that. Sure. And so it felt like all of the attention toward pleasure was on me. Like I got to direct what was going on. It was amazing.
Thanks for listening to Pleasure Central Radio, hosted by Rebecca Beltran. Thanks to our guests, Rose, Roger, Mr. Sailor Moon, Antonio, and Rita, for their willingness to share their experiences and their stories so intimately. And to all the other unnamed hosts and sexy participants who created a space for beauty, sexy art, and thoughtful and responsible play. Thank you. Rebecca also gets significant creative feedback from her beta listener group. For this episode, special thanks go to Sam for the encouragement and Sandy Waters for the clarity. And to anyone else we might have missed, you are loved. We look forward to your company on the next episode. Ciao!